Hey everyone! In this short lesson, I'm going to show you how to make an animated GIF and export it correctly. Um, you've probably seen, if you've been watching the previous videos, this Mighty Quinn Brewpub logo. And what happens with it is this foam, it's beer foam from a Guinness Stout, comes up to fill the space of the cue. So right now we have that foam layer and we have the cue under it, but it needs to come up within the cue. So I need a layer mask for this to happen. And I need a layer mask that's aligned with this cue and in the shape of the cue. So that's an easy thing to do. I can just go to the cue layer, which is simply a cue that I rasterized, that I drew and rasterized. And if I hold down the Command key on the Mac, I get over my icon, what I get is a little finger pointer with a rectangular marquee. If I click down, it loads the selection of whatever layer that is. It loads it as a selection. All right, the layer selection for that. So that guy's loaded up. So again, it was just command clicking on that icon. Then I can come up here to my foam layer while my marching ants are still showing. And if I select the foam layer and I go to the layer mask icon, because I already have a selection, it knows that I'm going to want to make a mask out of it. So if I click the add layer mask, it makes a mask for me that is basically the same shape of the cue and is lined pixel to pixel with the cue, but it's on my foam layer, my beer foam layer. Now by default, like if I go to move it now, what will happen is the cue and the foam move together. I don't want that to happen. I want the cue to stay right where it is, that shape to stay right aligned with my actual letter cue. So I have to click right here on this lock, turn it off. That's the little lock. I clicked on it again to turn it back on, click again to turn it off. Just click on it once, it goes away. All right, so now if I move the foam, it's a very different kind of thing. The foam moves within that mask, which is, as you can see, what I want to happen. The only thing is I want the foam to start at the bottom and come to the top. So the foam is basically at the ending point right now. That's how I want the logo to look on the marquee. And I have this piece here just to get a sense of what it's going to look like, but I'm going to actually turn that off before I make the PNG because it's a very complex shape and it's already built into the placard that this thing is going to sit against. I don't have to align this to the placard because all this wood grain alignment would be a pain in the butt. Okay, so keep that in mind. Also note that I've already cropped this down to just the shape of the logo. Like in my original layout, I had logo and my whole mock-up done in Photoshop, but I've cropped it down just to this to make it much, much easier. Otherwise, I'd get a giant animated GIF, and that would be impossible to work with. So I used the crop tool to begin with, and I cropped it just to this shape. There's my crop tool, just to remind you. All right, so we're ready to go ahead and animate. So let's bring up our timeline, window timeline, and hit our little twirly here. So we want to move the foam. And we want to move the position of the foam. So we're already at the very end here. And then we're going to hit the little keyframe, the stopwatch. That's our initial keyframe. Then we can back up over here. And I'm going to hold down Shift on my keyboard because that'll constrain my motion. And I'm going to drag this straight down just outside the frame. That set another keyframe for me. So this keyframe is basically memorize this position, and the last keyframe memorize the last position, and then Photoshop puts all the intermediate frames in there for me. So I hit the little space bar to play it. You can see my foam go up. I'm not sure what that little tweak is at the end. But if I want to basically shorten this, which I can do, I can just have these guys snap. I can just change every layer. I can make these longer or shorter. It was about 1 minute and 17 frames, or a second and 17 frames, so about a second and a half. I want it closer to a second anyway. I'm going to go ahead and pull these guys back. Shorten that guy just a hair. All right, so basically we're good. Now I just need to export it. play through one more time. Okay. For now, I'm going to keep a little bit of headspace up here. I'm not sure if I want it to go all the way. I can always modify that keyframe, by the way, that I had in at the end. Or simply add another one. Remember, you can always, if you need to add another keyframe, I can move this guy if I want, or I can add another one. Just click on the little diamond. This guy's pretty much irrelevant now because he's outside my timeline. It's okay. But remember, at any point, I can add an intermediate keyframe if I want to click on this, if I wanted this foam to go off to the side and then up or whatever. You know, feel free to play around and undo if you need to. Let's export it. To do this, we got to save it as a GIF because that format holds animation within it. So we would do save for web, export, save for web. Okay, that gives us a lot of options that are great, and I've shown you this before, so let's blow it up, Command plus it. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? See how shitty that looks? I'm going to turn this layer off, but I'm going to keep the brown on. I mean, I have two options I can do here. I'm going to keep the brown on because it's going to have this brown grungy layer around it, but it'll look great against brown, which will be this. But at the same time, this is one solid color brown, so it only is going to take one. It's just one color for my color table, because remember, the most colors I can have is 256 colors for a GIF. So this is way too complicated. This, however, this brown is not. And you'll see when this goes against a brown background that any sort of brown fringe will not be a problem. I don't want any white fringe because that would look really weird against a dark background. So I'm keeping that brown turned on. So let's try that again. Export, save for web. And notice I've already made the brown transparent. I just selected it with the eyedropper here, this brown, and I told it to be transparent over here. All right, you can take any color and you can tell it to be transparent. Just click on it, and then you say, I want that color to be transparent, and you just click this little icon right here. So it says map select colors to transparent. I did that with the brown already. It remembers this because I went through this already to make the actual image, and Photoshop seems to remember. All right, but again, see that brown outline? Don't worry about that because again, it's going to go against a brown background, so it's all going to look really nice and smooth. At this point, I can play it, see how it looks. I got it set to once because I don't want this thing to keep happening. I want them to fill the beer up at the beginning when you first land on a page and then hit stop. Otherwise, it's going to be too distracting. And then I can click save. If I feel like I need more colors, I can add more colors up here. But there really wasn't that much difference between the two, so I elected to go for a slightly smaller version. You can see that if you look at the borders, especially up here, get a few more colors to play with. So I guess I could live with that as well. It's not much of a much larger file. All right, then we save it, and where does it go? It goes into our local root folder. So wherever that local root folder is, put this thing. I'm going to go ahead and stick it on the desktop for now, just so I can show you guys our finished thing. So, but normally it would go into your local root folder. We could call it animated. Logo, all lowercase, no spaces, and on the desktop. All right, I'm going to minimize Photoshop. There's my animated logo. I'm going to go ahead and drag a new tab over from Chrome on my other screen, and we'll just drop it in just to make sure it works. And see how you don't see, even on black, you don't see that brown gristle because it's very dark, but it's going to go against the dark thing. If you want to watch it again, we'll just hit the refresh. Yeah, now I'm not sure if I want to keep this space up here. Maybe if I had stroked that O, I would keep it. I think I'll go back and re-edit it just a hair so it goes all the way to the top and export it again. It's not a big deal. All right, we are done. If you have any questions, just email me.